Well, good morning. We do have Kirk Bishop with us again, and what we'd like to do this morning is have Kirk run through some adjustments that were made since the last committee meeting based upon committee comments and direction, and see if those are satisfactory to the committee, as well as verify the committee is satisfied with the remainder. And if this is the case today, what we'd like to do is then have it transmitted to the full board for consideration in the month of January. So that's kind of what we'd like to see today, and just if there's any other direction the committee wants to take, just let us know. That with that, chair's approval, I'd like to let Kirk.
Okay. Good.
Thank you, David, and good morning again, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Kirk Bishop with Duncan Associates. You'll remember, of course, that we were together in the committee room on November 30th, where we spent a fair amount of time going over some changes that were proposed to the draft. Since that time, we have benefited greatly from the discussion and input of the committee. We've made, by my count, 4 substantive changes to the draft of the zoning amendments package since November 30th. The first one, we noticed during our discussion of the accessory dwelling unit, those are the small secondary units, either done through internal conversion of the primary dwelling unit or the addition of a small detached accessory dwelling unit. We noticed at the time that the internal accessory dwelling units, those contained within the primary dwelling, were not permitted as of right in the A and E districts, the ag and estate districts, whereas the detached units were, and that seemed, I think it was an oversight on our behalf. So we have revised the use table in the draft to show the small internal accessory dwelling units as permitted as of right in the A and E districts, putting them on the same grounds as the detached units in those larger lot districts. That makes sense? The second change I want to bring to your attention, or actually the second and third, pertain to the solar farm amendments. You'll remember, of course, that we have added an entire new section dealing with standards for proposed new utility scale solar facilities in the county. 2 changes were made since November 30th. We have revised the security fencing requirement provisions to require a 7-foot fence as opposed to what was previously a 6-foot fence. And we have expressly prohibited the use of barbed wire or or any kind of similar razor wire or anything like that, unless as part of your special use approval you expressly require or allow that. So barbed wire prohibited, although as part of your special use permit, if for reasons unbeknownst to us now you wanted to approve that, you'd be able to do that through the special use approval process. The second change related to the solar farm amendments was a minor tweak to the language about what an applicant needs to submit at the time of their application for a special use permit. The provision on November 30th said that they needed to submit their interconnection agreement or interconnect agreement with the utility. We've learned through Sam's research and talking to applicants that that's a long process for getting those interconnect agreements approved. So we revised the draft to say that you either submit your interconnect agreement or evidence that you have an interconnect agreement application in process so that you'd be able to accept that. So those are the 2 changes related to solar farms. The third area of change relates to the new provisions regarding the parking of trucks and commercial vehicles and recreational vehicles. estate and R-zoned properties. It was pointed out to us that we didn't necessarily want to catch moving operations in our net in terms of when large trucks can be parked on a property. So we have revised the draft to expressly exempt moving trucks during a moving operation from needing to comply with those provisions, because it would often be the case that a larger truck would be parked temporarily while moving. So we have expressly added the exemption for moving trucks. And then finally, again, with regard to the truck parking provisions, I want to bring to your attention something we've noticed since the draft that you have was prepared. Last sheet. If you'll look, I think as part of your packet, we've included the draft on page 97 of the little packet that was handed out.
Right.
You'll notice that the table there that shows the limits by zoning districts doesn't currently include the A2 classification, kind of germane to the previous item on your agenda. I wanted to bring that to your attention, is that as drafted, there would be these truck parking provisions would not apply in A2. And it was, I guess, maybe a bit of an oversight on our behalf to discuss that with you previously. So, as we see it, you have a couple of options moving forward. You could instruct us to revise the draft once again to add A2 and put it on a similar ground as the E1, E2, R1, and R2 classification. Or you may be perfectly comfortable with not regulating large truck parking on A2 zoned parcels, in which case no further change would be required prior to you taking action. That makes sense?
I wouldn't have a problem including A2 in this E properties. What does the rest of the board says? Do you have a problem with that?
In other words, you're saying no parking of anything over Class D? You explained it.
Yeah, they'd be limited to 2 vehicles up to a Class D license tag if we were to add A2 to the draft. And that's up to, what are we at, 12,000 or 16,000? 12,000 pound vehicle. If we were to add A2, they would certainly be able to do it, but they'd be limited to 2 on the property.
Are a lot of landscapers, are they A2, David? Do you know?
And then predominantly A1.
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 Okay, I don't see any objection to changing that, add A2 with the E properties.
Okay. We will prepare that and have that ready for the agenda at which this is posted for action. Are there, and that really concludes my overview of what's changed since the November 30th draft, but I certainly want to afford you the opportunity to ask any more questions about any of the other items in the overall amendment package.
One item I noted, the on-premise dynamic signs. I think we discussed at the last meeting. Mr. Mustis brought up he thought we should keep a special use permit, but the latest version that I see shows that they're permitted use. I think we should go back to the special use permit. Dynamic signs of residential districts. That's on page 30 of the.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to ask you. So we'd be happy to also make that change if that's the sense of the committee.
Anybody have an objection to doing that? Okay, yeah, let's make that.
Thank you for noticing that. We did discuss that, and that was an oversight for me not changing that on the table.
Okay, Judy has some comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the solar farm ordinance that's in there. And just want to ensure that we have, I know that we went back, and I missed the last meeting unfortunately, but I know they went back and forth with the decommissioning plan and felt that the residents should be the one responsible for the decommissioning plan with the solar company. So my whole concern is, of course, I'm on the Farm Bureau Board too, so this is where a lot of my conversation comes from, is that if for some reason the solar company goes bankrupt, or whatever, and the landowner then is stuck with this property and decides to up and leave, and just let the property, go up, and we end up with it, do we have something in here that covers us to ensure that we can be made right or can work with it to go after the company? Is there something in here that does that?
So I'm going to answer it in two ways. One, at the time of the special use permit, the applicant and/or the property owner will need to describe to you their plan for decommissioning and tell you who contractually is going to be responsible for the decommissioning.
Okay.
So we've left it open. It could be the applicant, it could be the property owner, it could be some combination, I suppose. In the event that they don't make good on those commitments, at a later date, you would have the full enforcement power of the zoning ordinance to be brought to bear in terms of pursuing action against a non-compliant owner or applicant in that case. I guess it is also possible, as part of the special use permit, that you may find in unique circumstances that you need more than a sort of written agreement and could address some more, some greater teeth to their decommissioning commitment at the time of the special use approval. But there is no express requirement for any financial guarantee in the draft, as you well noticed.
Okay, and then also, and I didn't see it here, as far as field tiles, what is, if they're going to be putting these posts into the ground, potentially that would hit a field tile, what do we have in here? Because maybe I just am not seeing it. Do we address that?
We do require in the draft, as of the November 30th draft, and it's certainly carried over into this one, a express requirement for them to do, to identify the location. This is on page 66 of the draft, middle of the page, item L3. Owner-operator is responsible for identifying the location of all subsurface drainage systems and for immediately repairing damage to drain tiles and other drainage systems that result from construction, operation, or maintenance of the solar farm.
Thank you.
And again, you would have the full enforcement capabilities of the ordinance and the overall county code to be brought to bear in the event that they do that.
Steve?
Yeah, with the solar farms, you just said, you answered my question last meeting by saying the same thing again, that it's an agreement between the owner and the person and the developer. Well, I've done a lot of reading about this since then, and the only reason that these solar companies are coming are because of the incentives. They can't be a profit without the incentives from the feds or the state. The state is probably going to at one point have no choice but to take away the incentives because they can't pay their bills or rent. So once that's gone, then the farmer gets his land back and it's got that stuff on it if he made an agreement to get it back. Well, now the land may be worth less than it costs to get rid of the stuff there. So if the county got the land back, which is a bad thing for the county to have to take somebody's land, but if it happened, because that losing value. So I think that, we have to really be careful with this stuff, because these companies, they're gonna come in, and when the incentives go away, they're gonna go. And Jim Musa said last meeting, there's miles and miles and miles of underground cable.
That was Doc Gregory.
Well, Doc did. Well, I talked to some other people, and they say, yeah, that it could cost as much, or it could cost as much or more to take the thing down as it was to build it. And then you got all that concrete, because there's concrete pilings. Doc said that, Doc Gregory said that. So, I mean, I'm like real nervous about this whole thing now, because I don't like the county being liable for anything. And it seems to me like these places could be in and out really quick. And then we could end up, either the landowner and the county getting screwed, and the company just runs away. So I don't know what we can do about it exactly.
But isn't there a decommissioning agreement in the application, didn't you say that?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, what I'm saying is we have to make sure that the decommissioning agreement includes enough money. That's stuff what I don't understand, how we don't want to make bonds with, or do we want to make bonds? How are we going to make sure that the cost of decommissioning doesn't exceed the value of the land? Because that's probably what could happen.
The comment from staff. Sam?
I would just like to provide a point of clarification. Developers were so excited to come to Illinois and reap the incentives from BJO, which you'll hear more about from Sarah of Borrego Solar, who will be here on Thursday to speak in conjunction with Cypress Creek, because they are ratepayer funds, so they cannot be swept by the state. The low-income solar program funds are at risk for being swept by the state, but they cannot sweep ratepayer funds from the utilities. So just that point of clarification. And as far as decommissioning plans go, any developers we've spoken with, we've asked them to have an engineering firm do that decommissioning plan, so they're not doing it in-house. And I have looked at the decommissioning plan from Invenergy's solar farm in Streeter, Illinois, and I did do a projection out of what you could probably assume a ballpark per acre, what that value, that cost is to decommission. It's about $7,000 an acre.
Okay, Judy?
So I also have a couple things that I want to ensure. I know that when all the different pipelines came through my district, we had so many different things going on and everything like that. This is a new project that we're dealing with right now. And so, and I can give an example of a utility who was coming through the area, there's Aqua Water coming from Kankakee to University Park that filed with the ICC, said they didn't have to have an ag mitigation agreement because they weren't going through farmland and such. And we made sure that there was an ag mitigation agreement in place. So will we have an ag mitigation agreement with any of this? And in all the pipelines, we did hire a farm specialist to ensure that everything was done the way it was supposed to be, so that there was somebody on site during the construction phases. Are we looking into any of that?
There's no express requirements in the amendment at this time that address the ag mitigation agreement and on-site monitoring.
Yeah, I really think that, I mean, I know we can make changes as we go here, but I hope that everyone would go ahead and look at the document you have attached from November 7th from the Farm Bureau. Read those different things that come up as ag. I mean, the intent would be that this property could possibly be turned back to ag land. And so I'm just concerned, knowing what we've dealt with, all the different things in the ag community, I think it's very important that we strongly consider putting much of what's in the bulleted points from the Farm Bureau into our solar ordinance.
David?
So I guess what we're looking for is that the committee's going to have to make a decision because the content with regard to this particular use was addressed at the last committee, and there was a consensus after discussion to accept that language. So I guess we need more specific direction from the committee as do they want to deviate from that prior consensus and make additional changes.
I think those things can be addressed at the time of the application, can't they, David, through special use?
They can add additional conditions, that is a possibility that would be site-specific with certain requirements on top of what the ordinance, minimum requirements of the ordinance might.
I don't think we can cover everything in the whole universe here today. I think we've got to look at each specific project. And if there are things that appear to be a problem, we can bring those up at the time.
So when they apply for a special use permit, then we can talk about decommissioning it again? Because right now, I don't know about the rest of the board, but I've been reading a lot about it, and I don't know enough about it.
Well, we have a couple options here. Is that upon application for a special use permit, based upon the particular situation with that application, if there's a relationship with some issues that the board feels they want to mitigate, they can impose certain conditions on that special use to address those. So as much as we're trying to do our best job right now to try to address this particular use, if there's something in the future you feel is appropriate, yes, we can condition it. And you also have to keep in mind too, is that as we go through this process, even after implementation, like we did with the original zoning ordinance in 2012, if we see things that, or you do, that we missed, you don't like, you want to change, we can always come back and change things or add things.
Judy?
Okay, so here's the thing that I want us to think about. I would like everyone to go ahead and read the letter from Mark. We have a presentation from the solar farm on Thursday, which gives everybody a clear picture of what they're looking to do. I just know that having dealt with different processes in the ag area where I live, like just aqua water main seems like a very nice thing, providing water, clean water to everybody. There were issues that I had to work with the aqua company on because they did not do it, they did not file with the ICC, and I had to make sure that it was covered. Illinois Farm Bureau attorneys got involved. My issue is that if we can cover some of this up front, it makes the most sense rather than trying to have a board member drive right around and get things straight, because you just want to cover your bases. So I have concern with that, so if everyone could go ahead and read that. I mean, I know that we can always go ahead and make modifications afterwards, but also we want to make sure that the special use permit for this first solar company that's coming for us is as complete as we possibly can make it to ward off any possible problems we might expect.
Dean?
I just want, yes, probably 90% or more of these will be built on probably in agricultural areas, solar farms. But you also have to realize that there's special incentives, provisions for solar on brownfield sites. They may not be obviously ag sites. And we do have something in here too, you can build on an industrial site. So it may not be applicable in all cases to have an ag mitigation, is what I'm trying to say.
That's true, but
Yeah.
if you say if the proposed solar farm will be built on an ag property, we want.
Yes, yeah, I
We're
understand.
gonna have different things, if it's a brownfield, we're gonna have different things that we're not even thinking about on ag land that would apply there.
Absolutely.
So it may be that, you have a slot in our solar ordinance that we could fill in as we hit those topics, because you don't know all those subjects right now.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure you were aware that even though most of them will be on farms, there are going to be a few possibly, I don't know.
I love brownfields.
For brownfield sites for use, yeah.
That's great, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I like the idea. I like the idea of going green with solar and all that. But whenever the government gets involved and has to give an incentive for a company to be profitable, that throws up all kinds of red flags to me. And that's the only reason I keep bringing up about decommissioning, because if they can't make enough money without incentives, the product isn't as good as they're claiming. So, you know, I guess you gotta really look at the big picture here. So,
I mean, they're not throwing a dart at a map and saying, right there, there's money there.
if they don't get the incentives, they won't build it.
Yeah, but I'm saying their company.
So without the incentives, there's no incentive for them to build a solar farm. And at any time, they can lose the incentives. That's where I'm starting to get a bigger and bigger problem with it. And I know the panels are worth money and all this other stuff, but when you gotta start taking everything down, and I don't know how, I need to know a lot more information on it, that's all. But what you said, we can change it when they go for a special use, we can discuss it. I'm fine with that then. As long as we can discuss it at a special use, and by that time, maybe we'll have more information that is more viable.
David?
A couple of different things. Number one, I mean, I read the Farm Bureau's letter just real quick, and the two primary issues here is the field tiles and topsoil. And specifically with field tiles, that is something that's typically addressed under the water resource ordinance through the site development permit process, where there is monitoring that the field tiles, if they're damaged, they're required to be connected, and be repaired, things of that nature. So that's something that's not necessarily within the zoning, it's addressed through the site development permit process. So, you know, the topsoil, again, I'd have to ask a specific question in the office about, you know, treatment of topsoil, what's done with it and where it's put. But I do know specifically the field tiles are addressed through the site development permit process. Now, again, with the zoning component, I know there's a lot of discussion on, you know, incentives and credits and things of that nature. But again, you have to keep in mind the zoning ordinance, the specific intent is to address the use and whether or not the use is appropriate, and if so, it's regulated. It's not necessarily to get into the appropriateness of the tax incentives or other types of considerations from financial standpoint. So we need to keep that, kind of keep focus on that.
Sam, you have a comment?
I just wanted to clarify my comment about sweeping of funds, because I know that sounds like the state can really sweep if they need to. They can borrow those funds, cannot sweep those funds or eliminate them for the lifetime of the legislation. I just want to make that point clear. And I understand that you're associating the incentives with, you know, will developers stay, and that's the connection to what you're talking about. But Sarah Wokos from Borrego Solar she actually helped write the legislation, so she will be here Thursday to discuss that in more detail and answer your questions.
Okay. Anything else? Any comments by committee? Kurt, do you have anything?
No, we're hopeful that you'll see fit to maybe put this package on the agenda in January. Is that
Okay, David?
I do have one final thing. I hate to throw this out right now. And Brian's letting me know if there's one minor matter that we probably, you don't know about this yet, Kurt, we need to discuss to see if we want to address it today. And this, I promise you, should be the last thing today on this. But I'm going to let Brian kind of speak to it. It does have to deal with the winery issue in the agricultural districts with the liquor component to this, and one minor tweak that you may want to make today.
Okay, Brian?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The new the revisions include several uses in the agricultural districts, A1, and the agricultural residential, A2, that like agritourism, agri-entertainment, cultural center, restaurant, winery. That's all wonderful, but we forgot to add into the use table like ancillary liquor sales or bar sales. So basic as a special use permit. So right now those columns are blank. So we're allowing all these uses that would likely have alcohol if the board granted it, but we don't have the permit to apply for the alcohol. So I thought it would be important that we update the use table to include A1 and A2 as special use permits for the liquor related activities. So,
Makes sense.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that.
So
David?
if it's the consensus of the committee, if you could we recommend you make a motion to transmit to the board for consideration the zoning ordinance update as amended with considerations today.
Okay, let's have a motion. We have a motion.
Denise, the motion, I second.
Motion second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Reports, I have no reports. Committee members, any reports?
I just want to say one thing. Oftentimes, land use committee comes under, I don't want to say attack, but people get frustrated because when they're dealing with the process, they don't understand the process. They get turned down, they get told no. I just wanted to read into the record something that I received from an individual. And it said, "Hello, Ray. I just wanted to take the time to share my positive experience with the Will County Land Use Department. My husband and I purchased a 1-acre home in unincorporated Elwood in February with the intention of building a new home. Our experience dealing with the Land Use Department was fantastic from the start. Our main contacts were Mike Spentana and Owen Needham. I sent several emails through the process and they were all answered quickly and thoroughly. I was quite surprised, as I deal with many building departments for work, and the process isn't always as smooth as what we experience with Will County. Our inspector, Greg, was also great to work with and always took the time to answer any questions we had. I just wanted to take a few minutes to thank you and the Will County Land Use Department for a job well done. Sincerely, Melissa Heed from Meadowbrook Builders." But I just want to say thank you, because I know a lot of times, we up here hear the bad, but I definitely want to share with you, and we definitely hear the good. So thank you for a job well done. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Steve?
Yeah, the first thing, I have two things I wanted to say here. The first one was that, last month after our meeting, I had words with Mr. Paddock, and I just want to make it real clear that the land use is our staff, and the land use implements what policies we create. And there's no reason, and Kurt's not here, and I wish he was, so I'm going to say it again at the county board. But I want you guys to know that I was given a compliment to two of your members. And the next thing I know, I was personally attacked by Mr. Paddock with language that was not appropriate. And then, unfortunately for me, my temper flared, and I said the exact same words back to him. And I just want to let everybody know that, I get it, we're going to not agree with stuff, and that's what government's about. Everybody can disagree, and we come to a conclusion. But at no point are we supposed to be calling each other names. And especially the staff, for no reason, isn't supposed to tell a county board off using derogatory terms. So I just want to make that real clear to everybody, because in the future, if anybody's going to say nasty things to me or call out my character, I'm going to make a big deal out of it, so much so, because I'll be filing reports to HR on it. I'm not going to tolerate it. So just so everybody knows that I'm not telling you guys, because you guys haven't done that to me, just one person. So make sure he knows, and I will say that the full county board. The next thing is something that we talked about before, but I got a letter, an email from the real estate board, and they're saying that they're getting complaints from people that are have permits that were pulled on properties that are anywhere from 2 to 4 people after the permits were pulled own the property. So we talked about it, I think, with Judy about 3 months ago, about permits that were pulled and they weren't closed. Well, now, and I'll give you the letter, but the email. But what they're saying is that many people are calling them, complaining about them getting called by you guys about permits that they never pulled. It was pulled by previous owners. And so I don't know what the solution exactly is, but it needs to be addressed. If they're sending me an email on it, it must be more than one person. So I'll give it, who wants to take this? So I'll give it to the right person.
Any comments,
You
Mr.
guys could address it next time.
Mike?
I have an agenda item where we will discuss the permit exemptions proposed by County Board Member Page. I'd like permission to inform you of staff's analysis of that proposal.
Okay. Before we do that, is there any other comments by committee? Okay. Yeah, we'll move on to the building permits exemption discussion, which Steve has brought up. Okay, Mike, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Weigel. The focus of County Board Member Balch's permit exemption proposal is based on the premise that building permits should not be required for repairs and maintenance. The staff analysis of County Board Member Balch's proposed permit exemptions finds that 47 out of the 53 proposed exemptions are already exempt in current county code. It's also important to note that of those proposed exemptions, many listed by County Board Member Balch are actually less lenient than exemptions already in the books. This topic has largely been presented to stakeholders and on social media as repair and maintenance work should not require a building permit, with the assertion that the Land Use Department is currently requiring permits for repair and maintenance. Ordinary repair and maintenance work does not require a building permit. Section R105.2.2 of the 2012 International Residential Code and Section 105.2.2 of the 2012 International Building Code establishes this exemption. The Land Use Department consistently applies the aforementioned exemption and does not require permits for ordinary repairs and maintenance as defined. The fact is, County Board Member Balch believes that certain items or scopes of work that are not defined as repair and maintenance by the 2012 International Residential Code and the 2012 International Building Code should in fact be considered repair and maintenance or otherwise be exempt. The 2012 International Residential Code and 2012 International Building Code are not the product of overzealous bureaucrats, and they are not codes that have been written by the Land Use Department. These codes, promulgated by the International Code Council, are the product of an 8-step adoption process conducted by committee staffed by construction officials, design professionals, trade association representatives, contractors, manufacturers, government agencies, and other qualified individuals. The resulting codes are adopted by municipalities, counties, states, countries, and by the Will County Board in 2014. It's important to note that a lot of the discussion and debate regarding these permit exemptions is based on codes that the board approved with a unanimous vote 4 years ago. The purpose of the codes is to provide consistent and uniform minimum construction standards allowing for a high level of building safety to be achieved. Not only does this ensure health and life safety, these standards have economic benefits of reducing long-term maintenance costs and lowering insurance liabilities. Now, there's been quite a few assertions made on social media and to stakeholders. I'd like to address those comments that have been made publicly. One comment is permit requirements are created to produce revenue. That is a false statement. Permit fees are designed to recapture costs associated with the processing of the permit application and performing associated inspections. It's important to note, permit fees have not been increased by the county since 2003. That's 14 years where permit fees have remained stagnant. The Maximus study, which was initiated by the Will County Board and performed by an independent third party, showed that those existing permit fees are actually not even high enough to recapture the county's costs for doing the work. A second statement that's been publicly made, permit requirements are created by staff to warrant their employment. This is false. Permit requirements are developed by the International Code Council and adopted by the Will County Board. The current codes being questioned, again, were approved by the board in 2014. In 2017, permit applications and issued permits reached a 17-year high. During that 17-year period, 14 full-time positions within the building division have been eliminated, resulting in a current building division staff level of 5. Right now, we're at 3,300 permits this year. That's over 600 permits per employee. We have 2 building inspectors. We've performed over 6,000 building inspections this year. That's an average of almost 20 a day per inspector. It's important to note, too, that during that 17-year period, we have not increased permitting requirements. The list of exemptions within those adopted codes has actually grown. Another comment that's been made, the Land Use Department can opt out of state mandated codes. The Will County Land Use Department obtains legal counsel from the State's Attorney's Office and Attorney General. At no time has either entity instructed the Land Use Department to ignore or use regulatory discretion towards codes that are mandated by Illinois state statute. Another comment that has been made, you cannot perform an emergency repair without first obtaining a building permit. This is false. Section 105.2.1 of the Residential Code and Section 105.2.1 of the International Building Code allow for emergency repairs as long as a building permit is obtained after the fact. Another comment that's been made, battery-powered smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors are prohibited. You are required to obtain a building permit and hardwire them. This is inaccurate. If an existing residence is improved with a battery-powered smoke detector or carbon monoxide detector, you are allowed to replace them without a building permit. Battery-powered smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors are required to be upgraded and hardwired at the time of a remodel or renovation. Another comment that's been made, the implication that staff identified reasons for requiring a building permit are simply justification for forcing a property owner to obtain a permit. This is false. Reasons cited by staff are embodied within the adopted codes. Another comment that's been made, replacement of a piece of siding requires a building permit. This is false. At no time does the Land Use Department state a building permit would be required for the replacement of one piece of siding. While the replacement of one piece of siding is not explicitly exempt, the adopted building codes grant me, the building official, fairly broad discretion. This discretion is applied fairly and equitably with common sense and is reflective of the county leadership's goals and objectives. Another comment that's been made, replacement of a fixture, toilet or faucet, where no other changes to the plumbing system are occurring requires a building permit. This is inaccurate. The Illinois Plumbing Code, which is state law, does not contain a specific itemized list of exemptions. I have exercised discretion, and the aforementioned work in the residential application is deemed to be exempt. Any proposed modification of the Illinois Plumbing Code must be presented to the Illinois Department of Public Health. The county board does not possess the statutory authority or jurisdiction to amend the Illinois Plumbing Code. So when I look at this issue and try to approach it not based on ideology but on public policy, I identify three things. One policy issue could be identified as the cost or financial burden of obtaining a building permit. The staff has a recommended solution to that policy issue. Eliminate the permit fees for the specific permits you have concerns about. This reduces the financial burden placed on homeowners and contractors while still ensuring proper workmanship, health, and life safety. Another policy issue, the time or inconvenience associated with requiring the public to obtain a permit. The staff solution to that problem, which has already been implemented, is that we launched a new permit system in the fall of 2016. This permit system allows for online permit application, online permit payment, online permit issuance, and online inspection request submission. Simply put, you can obtain a building permit 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The focus of County Board Member Balich's concerns relates to permits that are typically issued, I'll say within hours of application. Many of these permits can be issued within 10 minutes of application. The third policy issue is knowledge or education. We could summarize that as public awareness. Over the past 2 years, the Land Use Department has executed numerous initiatives aimed at increasing public awareness and public education. Those initiatives include the implementation of commercial permit application guides, residential code summary guides, targeted contractor education specifically designed to reduce the occurrence of failed inspections, the use of videos and images to summarize code requirements, creation of inspection checklists for the public's use, occasional press releases, and the formation of chief building official policy memorandums. Those are all new things over the last 2 years. And we believe that those efforts will culminate with revision of the building division's webpage, which is expected to be completed by the spring of 2018. As for the 53 proposed permit exemptions, as I stated before, 47 of them are already exempt. In fact, some are more lenient on the books than what is proposed. I would be more than happy to go through each one, all 53, and discuss, or I can allow the committee to ask questions.
Okay. Steve, what's your comment?
Yeah, you said a lot of stuff, and I'd have to have that paper to read it and go along, but there's a lot of things that you're saying, but you're not getting the whole point of it.
That memorandum was distributed to you and it's sitting in front of you.
Well, you're reading off of that, some of the stuff that I wrote, I got directly off your paper from here. Like,
yes, that memo.
Yes, I got
that memo.
But that is, I don't want to argue that point. Here is what I'm saying. In the 2012 building codes, when we adopted that, I was on that committee. And when I talked earlier about having a little argument, I was telling two of your people what a great job this zoning one we just did. The zoning code update was fantastic. We had a lot of input and it went really well. When we did that building code thing, it was shoved down our throat. You might not think so. I was on the committee and we were told the only thing we had any say over was sprinklers. And every time I tried to bring something else up, it got thrown out. And I was new and dumb. And then I got a hold of our state rep from my area, and he got me a lawyer from the state to talk to about all these issues back then. And they said, we do not have to have a building code at all. Zero. He said that the state doesn't enforce any of those building code laws on us. So we can opt out of wherever we want. And I'm not saying that we're opting out of any of this stuff. All I'm saying is that when if a person wants to replace their front door, according to this, they have to get a permit.
That is true.
It's true. Well, people don't get a permit. They just go replace the door. Then the person that gets caught has to pay a permit fee plus a fine fee, which is another permit fee, 1.5 times the permit fee. So that's where the money comes in at. But nobody goes out and they go to Home Depot and get a better door than was originally bought on their door, because it's newer. A window. People aren't going to call and get a permit for a window. If they're just replacing it, they take the old window out, put the new window in, and they don't get a permit. Shut-off valves, they just put them in. They don't go out and say, well, we're going to crack the pipes and put a shut-off valve in, so now we got a problem. They just do it. Everybody does that. And I should say everybody, but majority of the people do that. When you put your hot water tank in, you have to take down the piping. But I don't know anybody that goes out and gets a permit for a hot water tank. They just do it. When I was talking about siding, it might be more than one sheet of siding. It might be 10 sheets of siding. When you're talking about a roof, it's leaking. If you go to the city of Chicago's stuff, the city of Chicago doesn't require you to get a permit for that stuff. Lockport doesn't require you to get a permit for that stuff. So when we're talking about repair and maintenance items, I mean, we can say everything's life safety. It's life safety to enter your house. But the reality is the law doesn't fit what the people even believe. Because when you talk to any of these people, I talk to the Farm Bureau, and they all agree with me. I talk to the unions, the trade unions rather, they all agree with me. I talk with the Real Estate Association, they agree with me. I talk to Republicans and Democrats in my area, and they agree with me. I talk with people all over the place, and everybody has the same feeling, that they don't get the permit. And so in our infinite wisdom and stuff, we have laws that reflect things that the general public don't even want to know about, don't care about, because they're not going to obey it anyway. If they need a door, they're going to put the door in, and they're not going to get a permit, even if you go online and it don't cost any money, because they think it's stupid. And I'm not calling you guys names, okay? I'm just saying this is what the reality is. So why do we have laws on the books that don't reflect what the public that we represent actually do? And I would bet a lot of money that there's people that work for your own division that don't get permits and fix this stuff. Now, when we start going over all the different items, what you just read, I don't have. So, you know,
I read verbatim for the memo that
From
you
this?
just held up in your hand. Yeah.
well, I wasn't following it verbatim, but I know on the,
That's not the right one.
oh,
It looks like that.
Yeah, he's got that.
that's the one I got, I saw. Okay, I was using the old one, sorry. But what I'm trying to get at is, when we start this discussion next meeting, you know, it's not an adversarial thing. I'm not trying to declare war on you guys. What I'm trying to do is reflect what the general public feels. It's our duty to create policies that are positive for the public, not positive where everybody does the wrong thing and then the ones that get caught have to pay a fine. Because everybody's doing the wrong thing.
Okay.
If I could just respond briefly. Again, these codes, you know, I wasn't part of the adoption process 4 years ago, but these codes were presented to the board, and the board did approve them with a unanimous vote, okay? And every 6 years, we come forward with the codes again to be readopted, and that process will be coming. It's about 2 years down the road right now. We've previously shown that of all the citations issued by the county this year, there were 2 related to the work that County Board Member Balch has concerns with. That comes out to like 0.03%
That's good.
of all citations issued by the county.
Well, why do we have the law?
My last comment on that point is, you know what? Everyone speeds too, so let's not have speed limits. Right?
Right. Okay, we have a list here that,
Go ahead.
we have a list of projects that Steve wants to get exemptions for, and you say the majority don't have to have exemptions. So why don't we talk about the ones that you still require that we get a permit for, and we can decide one way or another if we want to change something like that.
Tom, do you want to go let me address the ones that I wanted to look at? I think there's like 7 or 8 of them, that's it.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about.
Because most of them, see, and I didn't create this list. I told you guys that.
You
I got
Googled it.
I got the
found
list
them
from
online.
Googling all this other stuff, and it was verbatim on everybody else's website, so I just used it.
I have to caution against Googling building codes, okay?
No, I got the
You know,
website for each of different counties and cities, and this is the language they use.
Some of the
the exact
language you use is from jurisdictions in completely other states. You have to be careful doing that. You need to do apples to apples and
No,
look
I
at
get
the
that.
county codes.
Well, like the first thing that I had a question about, prefabricated swimming pools less than 24 inches deep.
Let's use the.
Well, that's what I'm using. The first 3, 4, 5, 6, they're okay, or 6 is the one I'm talking about first.
Let's go through one at a time. So we're
All right.
Which item are you on now?
Well, I'm going by what they had and what I was referring to, and I'm on number 6.
Okay, number
And
6.
it's number 6, and I don't know the answer because it's not real clear, but I have a feeling I do know the answer. It says prefabricated swimming pools that are less than 24 inches deep are exempt from getting a permit. So if the pool is 24 inches deep, does you need a permit?
Apparently.
If it's not less than 24, you need a permit.
if it's 24, you need a permit.
Yes.
Okay, so a 2-foot-high pool, you're going to get a permit, and that means you got to put a fence, right?
Yes, there are barrier requirements.
Okay, do you know anybody that buys a baby pool and puts it in their yard? It's because they sell them by foot, you know, it's 18 inches or 2 foot. And then they you have to put a fence around your yard for the pool?
Barriers will be
Okay, well,
required. And if you recall, the county board has actually adopted stricter barrier requirements than what this code establishes because of the number of drownings that occurred.
well, do we have anything for the people along the river so that the entire riverfront, that somebody could walk in that river and drown? Do we have anything for that? Did they have to put a fence
The
up?
building codes do not address natural features of the land.
Well, I'm just saying, all right, I don't agree with that one, number 6. I don't think if you want to say over 24 inches, fine.
What do you propose
At 24 inches and less, because them are baby pools. They're saying if it's 24 inches, which when you go to the store and buy one of them baby pools, they're going to have 24, they're going to have 2 feet.
So you want to exempt
24 inches and less. And frankly, you know, I find it absurd to even have to talk about them little baby pools, those swimming pools, because people, again, aren't going to get a permit for a 3-foot pool. But when you're talking about 2 foot, I mean, there's more water in the bathtub. You know, so I think that needs to be changed to at least, you know, a compromise down to say 24 and lower.
What does the committee think?
Or else you say that if they're, that you don't need a, and again, if you have children and you get a 12-foot pool and it's 3 feet deep, 12 foot and it's 3 foot deep, that needs a permit. Well, I bet if you go in people's yards, you'll find all kinds of violations because they didn't get it for 3 feet deep and 12 feet long. They think it's not needed. And I'm not saying ignorance isn't an okay for the law. But because the purpose, what you're saying is that somebody could fall in and drown.
So you want to add an inch to this
Yeah.
exemption?
Yeah. That, at least then when it's a real true baby pool, which is 2 feet deep, then it isn't a baby, a youth pool.
Can we make specific amendments?
My comments to the committee would be, if you find provisions that you do like to amend, to have County Board Member Balch work on that legislative language.
Well,
But the rest of them are, you know, that was just, you know, that was only one. Well, now you go to the next one, installation of doors and windows. And you said you need to have a permit to put a door and a window.
I would like to clarify that statement. When I said that storm windows and storm doors are already exempt, garage doors have been determined to be exempt.
Right.
Windows and exterior doors are not exempt.
Right, that's what it's, and that's because you're to ensure life safety and ensuring reliable egress. But if you're replacing the things, you're just taking a shelf of the window out, and you're not making it bigger, smaller, or anything. You're just taking one window out, going to Lowe's or Home Depot or Menards and buying the exact same size and shoving it back in the hole.
Again, the rationale provided is embodied in the codes. That rationale is to ensure life safety by ensuring reliable egress, to ensure structural changes to rough openings are done in a manner which prevents structural failure, to ensure manufacturer installation specifications are met, because failure to meet those specifications could result in the consumer's warranty being voided, to ensure compliance with the International Energy Conservation Code, which is adopted by the state of Illinois. We have not received any direction from the state's attorney's office or the attorney general's office to not enforce that state statute, to ensure safety glazing when required, and to ensure the contractors performing the work are registered, licensed, insured, and bonded.
So what my suggestion is that we exempt doors and windows. And as long as it's not a structural change. If you take your window out and you go buy a brand new window, which is probably going to be much better than the one that's already there, and you replace it, What's the, you know, okay, you're paying all these things. But at my house, I ain't replace nothing because I can't afford it. I gotta figure ways of making it look nice without replacing it. But people look at it and say, I'm gonna just take the window out and put another window in. They're not changing the size or structure. And they're not making the egress littler or bigger. It's exactly the same thing as they had before. There's no difference. So why do you have to have a permit if it's exactly what was there except it's new?
There were 5 other points provided in the rationale.
But I don't agree with those
My
ones.
my comment would be if the committee and board decide to exempt window replacements from permit requirements, you will also have to revise the contractor registration ordinance to ensure that we're no longer registering window contractors in Will County. Because if we're not issuing permits and we're not inspecting their work, there's no reason for us to register them and hold a bond for them.
You know what you just said is like apples and oranges. Because,
It's not, because we
no, it
can't,
is,
we
because you
can't
know what?
register.
If a person wants to hire a company, if they want to, they should be able to call and get somebody that's
Right.
approved by the county. But if they don't want to,
There's
that's
no
up to them.
reason, there's no reason for us to register them if we're not issuing permits or inspecting their work. We physically could not pull a bond from a contractor if we didn't issue a permit and inspect their work. So there would be no point in us holding a bond for the public.
Well, you know what, that's going to be a good discussion with the board.
Denise, do you have a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, for the 6 items, thank you. For the 6 items that are not already exempted, I would suggest that until we have some different direction from the state's attorney, we hold them as they are on the order or on the ordinance. And then if Illinois code should change or the state's attorney gives us some different direction, then we should consider changing them. But until that time, we keep them as they are to protect ourselves as a county and to comply with state laws.
Thank you.
Well,
Hold on, Steve.
I just read this stuff.
Not yet.
I'm just upset, because it's making me aggravated.
Normally,
When we're talking about doing our job to create policy that reflects what's good for our people,
Okay.
and we're
Now,
going to
you-
say life, safety, everything,
Steve, let me talk to do my job, okay? Do you go out and inspect the window installations? Does someone from the county?
Yes.
They do.
Yes.
So in a situation where there's a window that's located, the bottom of the window is within less than 18 inches from the ground, you are personally inspecting to make sure that they have
We're
safety
verifying
glasses.
the safety glasses.
When there's a window that's right next to a door, the hinged portion of, not the hinged portion, the striker portion of the door, making sure that there's safety glass within so many inches.
Or if it's close to a bathtub or a
That-
shower.
that's my
We are
point.
verifying that safety
So-
glass is installed.
So on some of the permits, that the county actually does go out and inspect and ensure, how are we going to make sure that the safety glass, like I said, I have no problem with eliminating some permits, I have no problem with that, because most people, you're right, they don't get permits, okay? But when there's a life safety issue involved, I have a real problem with it. And if you were to tell me that you don't go out and personally inspect that, then I would say, Mr. Balich is correct, we probably wouldn't need a permit. But if there are some certain situations where you are actually going out visually seeing what's being put in to make sure that the safety glass rating and the life safety issues are being adhered to, I don't see how you eliminate that permit on a window.
And there is only one permit issued by the county that we do not perform inspections on, and that is the manufacturing exempt or processing component permit. That is a type of permit that the county developed in conjunction with the Three River Manufacturers Association. And the purpose of that permit is it recognizes that we as a building department are not experts when it comes to actual industrial equipment, refining equipment, conveyor systems. So we issue permits on work in those industrial applications, but we do not inspect that work. That is the only permit issued by the county where an inspector isn't in the field following up, verifying the work is code compliant.
if that's true, how come I got that letter saying that these people own homes that weren't inspected? And that's what I just gave you guys.
We discussed that issue 3 months ago, and I thought I was pretty thorough in explaining what was taking place. I'll take this opportunity to discuss it again. When I took over the building division in 2015, it was determined that there was 3,000 open building permits dating back to 2011.
So that means you're not inspecting them right away?
No, that means that homeowners and contractors failed to call in final inspections. So I've implemented procedures to follow up with those 3,000 permits, to close them out, and I implemented procedures to prevent that from happening in the future.
Okay, and can I hear from Ray? I mean, you said about the windows. Okay, now what about doors? Nobody goes out and replaces, you know, you gotta get 3 hinges and put a new door on. What about doors? What's the safety element with taking the door off and putting the same size door back up? I mean, I'm just, because you're saying none of them were any good, and I'm not picking on you, but.
No, I'm not saying that any of them aren't good. I'm just saying we have to be very careful when we're looking at these, because there are certain life safety issues. If a child sits in a window seat that sometimes are 10, 12 inches, it falls backwards, it goes through the glass. Like a safety glass will break into 1,000 little pieces and the baby won't be cut.
What about
Coat
doors?
falls through one that you replaced and didn't do that, the baby's going to be severed in half.
Okay, we might have an issue with windows then, but what about doors?
Well, with doors, the only thing I would worry about a door is if someone were to replace a door, and actually, if you had a 3068 door, and then you replaced it with one with a side light on the side or on one side, if you did that, the header would not go across the entire top of the door. That could be a major issue with the load-bearing portion of the house. So if you're going to replace a 3068 door with a 3068 door, that's one thing. But if you're going to replace a 3068 door with a 5068 door, now you got a problem because the cripplers and the headers just will not support the
So what happens if you didn't even have a door? Because if your door was no good, what would happen to the house? Would it fall down because you didn't have a door?
Code would require you to have a functioning.
Well, I'm just, you know, when you go to Arizona, in Arizona, a lot of the homes there, when you go out in the desert there, they took the doors off the house and they took the windows out of the house too. And they didn't fall down, the house is still standing. So, I mean, I'm just trying to, people don't get a permit for a door, okay? So, I guess where we're gonna end up with a lot of arguments going on here. So we go to the next one.
Before we do that, we got somebody from the audience that wanted to make a comment. Dave, did you want to make a comment?
I'm not sure I do.
Well, you don't have to.
I think you guys have addressed some of the things that we came to ask you about, so I think we're good right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
He's from the realtor. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, so doors and windows, we got a lot of discussion. Okay, roofs. Replacing a roof, because it leaks, you have to get a permit. Well, people, again, if they have a leak in the roof, they go fix it right away. And they don't get a permit. So now, when I went through a lot of these other ordinances from like City of Chicago and Lockport, they don't require you to get a permit for fixing your roof if you have a leak in it. But they don't allow you to put a whole new roof on. And so I just went back to the idea that in those so-called things that I Googled, it said less than 25% of the roof.
If you were to pull the roofing permits we've issued this year, you may find 1 or 2 that could be classified as fixing. They're usually a tear-off and re-roof, almost all the time. And we're actually fairly lenient. When you look at jurisdictions that issue roofing permits, many of them do multiple inspections during the roof replacement process. We do not. We do one final inspection to check specific items. But, you know, we're not issuing a permit for someone to go on their roof and dab some roofing sealant in a leak. Or if a shingle tap blew off, we don't have someone come in and apply for a permit so they can stick that one shingle tap back up on the roof. Again, we're a very small and busy department. We recognize that we have to allocate our resources appropriately. And allocating our resources to someone who's putting one shingle tap back up on their roof would not be responsible.
What if they put up 15 singles?
Then you would need a permit.
Okay, so we'll be talking about that one too then. Siding, you said that you changed your mind on that, I think.
No, I didn't. There is no explicit exemption for any siding work. A permit is required for siding, but I'm noting that if someone called and said, hey, I lost a piece of siding in a windstorm, do I need a building permit? I would not have him come into our office and apply for a building permit to install one piece of siding.
What about,
something that has to be
four
recognized.
pieces?
Something that has to be recognized is the building codes that the county have adopted have very prescriptive requirements when it comes to how to construct a house, how to install various components. At the same time, it merely establishes a framework that allows the building official to use their discretion and determine what things warrant permit application and what things don't. And maybe to you, County Board Member Balish, the word discretion on a staff level might be considered a bad word, right? But that's how the code is written, and it establishes that framework for us to operate with it.
Well, you know how building
It's
codes
not black and
originated? Just so you guys know, back in the 1800s, that's when they really got heavy with building codes in New York.
I did the New York Times Act.
New York City.
Yeah.
And the whole idea behind it was the political different parties or groups or whatever, whoever was in power would go after their enemies with the code enforcement, and they'd register they'd measure the stairs, and the risers on the stairs weren't the right thing, and they'd tell them, look it up. You know, it was a tool. And I'm not saying you guys are doing that, but that's how it originated.
I wouldn't agree with that statement. I would say it originated.
Well, they had them back in England and Rome, but I
because
think
of
they were all doing the
substandard
same
living
thing.
conditions.
Because otherwise, the New York people weren't that smart, were they? They had to think of something. They didn't reinvent the wheel. They were just following along. But anyway, so when you say discretion, and you said one piece of siding, the actual law says you have to have it for one piece of siding.
The actual law is silent
But then why do you have to have it at all?
because it's not an explicit exemption, but there's framework established where I can deem something an ordinary repair. And again, if
Is
the
it
board,
ordinary
if the
repair
board
5
doesn't-
pieces of siding or 1 piece?
If the board doesn't like that discretion, if they believe that that discretion is not been used fairly or equitably, then yes, you do have to amend your codes.
Well, I'm not saying that you're doing something wrong. You gotta remember that. I'm not saying any of you guys are doing anything wrong. I'm just arguing about the policy. Not about I'm not condemning your work. You're following the policies that we set. So I'm not yelling, or I'm not upset about what you're doing. I'm trying to correct what we're doing. We have to set better policy. Okay, so now you got the siding.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, you want to go through some things. Here's a few things. First of all, I don't know anybody who, I just don't know if they're educated or if they know that they have to. I don't know anyone that replaces a hot water heater and gets a permit. If replaces a sink or a toilet and gets a permit. I don't know anyone that ever fixed some gutters, a leak in the roof, or some residential siding. So those are the ones I think that we can have discussion on. The bigger ticket items on the exterior of the house, the envelope of the house, like the windows and doors, I think we have to be very careful on because they do pose life safety issues. The one thing that the permit does do for those items, I think on the big ticket items, obviously when you're replacing an entire roof, I think there should be a permit because I think it protects the resident as much as it protects, the fact that they're doing the work correctly. But there are some issues. I think we should take some of those items, go back into our respective caucuses, come back and talk about it next month. Because I think just arguing back and forth really isn't providing anything substance to this committee. There are some things, like I said, we should look at, but I think as a whole, I don't think anyone can point fingers saying we should or we shouldn't get a permit, but I think there are some things that we could afford to look at.
What are you referring to, Ray, the letter from the...
Yeah, the letter from the Realtors Association, like I understand that. Like I recently, we had a hot water tank go out and we ran the lows and we we stuck one in. So now I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, I'm in violation of our own ordinance.
Well,
I'm in the
remember
village,
that
so-
falls under the plumbing code.
Yeah.
In my opinion, you can ask the state attorney's office. You can't just write an amendment to the state plumbing code. You would have to, as a body, go to the state, go before the Illinois Department of Public Health, and get that amendment adopted by the state.
Right, but what I'm saying more or less though is you have stepped up your education process to the residents, and that could in the last 2 years. And that may be the result of why you're getting so many increased permits and having a 17-year high. I think we need to continue to do that and educate the residents. Because me sitting here, I can just look, in the last year, I had a piece of fascia blow off my house, we put it back on. You know, I mean, I understand that I wouldn't need a permit, but some of the things on here, like fixing a leak in the roof or gutter replacement, a new sink, I replaced 2 toilets in the last year. You know, to me, there are a lot of things that
We clarified that on a residential application, we wouldn't have someone get a permit to replace a faucet or a toilet. If you're not changing the plumbing and you're merely setting the toilet down on a wax ring and bolting it down, there's nothing for us to look at.
Right.
And we don't have people get permits for that.
But aren't you, when you said that you can't change the plumbing, so.
You can't.
If you break most of the time when you replace your toilet, don't you put new shut-off valves in?
They're usually quick and active.
I mean, according to this, you can't do shut-off valves. And people that have a hose in their backyard can't put a shut-off valve on.
If you were to replace a hose bib, if you read the Illinois Plumbing Code and interpret it just based on what it states, if you replace a hose bib, that code would say that you're changing the piping, because usually the bib comes with the pipe attached to it at different intervals. And the code would say you need a permit to do that. I can't tell you we've ever issued a permit for that.
Well, nobody would ask for it.
But again, that's the state code. Go to the state with your concerns, I guess.
But, I think we really have to dedicate a meeting to this to go over, because this will go on and on and on. And then, to be more specific, I'll go through the thing and I'll put down a list and I'll give to everybody and you can talk. I'm not trying to fight with anybody about it. I'm just saying we have to make our policy make sense to the people that we represent. You know what I'm saying? You guys get it. You can't have a law that everybody says is stupid. And that's kind of what we got.
Okay, Steve, if you'll reduce your list to the ones that you disagree with staff.
And that'll be a lot easier.
Yeah, let's do that.
And keep it the life safety issue.
Can I say
Judy?
So I was just wondering, I know that we have some things that we may have adopted, and back, well, I don't remember what it was, I had a pool conversation as well, because having a permit for a 24-inch pool, something you threw up in your yard and you took down was something that didn't make sense to me. But some of the things that we have in place, correct me if I'm wrong, help the insurance costs for our county. So that's something that, not today, if we could have that conversation when we go into this to say, so while you haven't issued a permit for, what'd you say, for a toilet or whatever. Shut-off valve. We have it in place for a purpose to make sure that we're covered for insurance purposes. That's what I want.
I think that's a good point. There are insurance implications with all of this, and we can work on that.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Nothing else on this issue, is there any public comment? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.